This is why a young man murders the CEO of United Healthcare. He had strong conviction.
An elderly black man is removed from the House and censured. Two white Republican women abused Biden in a way that Al Green did not do to Trump, and they did not get censured.
And I watched. Yeah, but Mehdi, the whole concept of a society under law is that you and me and no one else, not the young man.
He didn't break any laws. People on January 6th broke laws. What law did Al Green break?
I understand. Rules,
decorum.
Rules.
I mean,
no,
Shannon
no,
Watts. No, let's just go back to decorum 1 second, because you gave a very long answer at the beginning. You just bypassed the decorum.
Yeah.
You did bring up decorum and civility in your original remarks.
I did.
Shannon Watts, who's a gun control activist, you may know her, founder of Moms Demand Action, she had this viral post. She said, democracy dies in decorum. Kind of riff on the post, democracy dies in darkness. She's right, isn't she? Democracy's on the line, and people like you are talking about decorum.
This is one of the wildest interviews Mehdi Hasan has ever done. Congressman Jim Himes actually compared a Democrat heckling Trump to murdering a healthcare CEO. You heard that right, murder. And in this clash, Mehdi Hasan absolutely dismantles him, exposing everything wrong with the Democratic obsession over decorum, while Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans shred democracy in real time. Let's break down how Mehdi destroyed this argument.
I think there's a lot of ways to fight righteous battles. Think of the civil rights movement. Malcolm X was part of that. Stokely Carmichael, fairly radical, right? Martin Luther King, criticized by radicals for being way too accommodating and moderate. You know who else was important? John F. Kennedy and Lyndon Baines Johnson. I think it's a mistake to get into the question of, do you want to be John F. Kennedy or do you want to be Malcolm X? All of those elements are really important, but I'm going to acknowledge that focusing on decorum is the wrong thing to do. I probably should have said the rules. And I'm going to acknowledge that rules and laws are different, but they are alike in the way that if we are to live in a society of laws and rules, we have to take off the table that I can break a rule or a law simply because I have strong conviction. This is why a young man murders the CEO of United Healthcare. He had strong conviction. This is why, to bring up another potentially sore topic, too many people seek to justify the extremely aggressive, brutal war on Gaza because of the horridness of the murder of 1,200 Israelis.
But those are killings and crimes we can disagree. Al Green saying the president has no mandate is not in the same moral or political universe.
You see, you're lawyering me here because it's not what he said that matters. He took a decision consciously to break a rule. And of course I'm not going to sit here and say that that's the same as a law against murder.
You say you voted against Joe Wilson, to censure Joe Wilson.
Yeah.
That was, 15 years ago. In the last 3 years, we had Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert repeatedly, abusively interrupt the president. Did you vote to censure them?
So the censure votes have not been about behavior, they've been about speech. They went after Adam Schiff, they went after Rashida Tlaib, they went after, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
For like, Marjorie Taylor Greene stood up and screamed at Biden in a way that Al Green did not do. That's not why she was called to censured. That's what I'm asking. Did you censure her for what she did at a State of the Union?
Aren't we outraged? Well, so remember,
a lot of people are upset about the double standard. An elderly black man is removed from the House and censured. Two white Republican women abused Biden in a way that Al Green did not do to Trump, and they did not get censured.
And I watched there through this speech as Marjorie Taylor Greene wore her hat. That's a violation of the rules. And the speaker didn't do anything about that. Now, we both feel outrage that Marjorie Taylor Greene was not held to account by the speaker who held Al Green to account. Why do we feel outrage? Because they refused to police our own, and it therefore follows logically, correct me if I'm wrong, that we should celebrate the fact that we are willing to police our own.
No, I think the argument from a lot of people who are upset with you is that Democrats cannot continue fighting in this way. It's as if you're playing football, and when I say football, I'm being British, soccer, and you're playing two teams and the other team keeps picking up the ball and running with it, and you insist we will carry on dribbling. You will lose in every occasion. At some point, you have to adapt to your circumstances.
Yes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you celebrate the breaking of rules and laws. So what do we do?
Not celebrate. It's just vast majority of your colleagues did not vote to censure Al Green. You did. You didn't have to censure him. You could have said, I wouldn't have done it, but you didn't have to vote to censure him with all those Republicans, all those authoritarians, all those MAGA cultists.
I believe that when it comes to rules and law, contexts matter a little bit, but not a lot. Again, how do I answer somebody who says you voted to condemn Joe Wilson, but not Al Green? law, you believe that the rules don't apply to your side. That would certainly be the common person's understanding of this.
I think
and there's not a terribly good answer to that.
I think you have a good answer, actually. I think you yourself have given the answer in the past. I went through your Twitter for the last year.
God bless
Here's what you've been saying about Donald Trump. You said he's betrayed our democracy. He's taking us into a constitutional crisis. He is, quote, breaking our democracy. He is dismembering our democracy. These are all your words about what Trump is doing. I don't think anyone thinks Barack Obama was doing that. George Bush, I have many criticisms. I think he's committed war crimes in Iraq, but I don't think he was trying to dismember American democracy. Trump is sui generis. I think that is your argument that you can make to the imaginary person who says, why did you do that but not this? You yourself have admitted that he is betraying our democracy, dismembering our democracy. If he's dismembering our democracy, then why on earth are you worried about the rules of what you do in the middle of his speech? A speech, by the way, in which he's insulting you to your face. He's calling you radical left lunatics. He's making racist jibes about Elizabeth Warren. You want to talk about politics? You guys look weak. The guy's bullying you and you're all just sitting there quietly. Al Greene looks strong.
So let's stay on the question that you asked, because I agree with that. I don't think anybody thought that the collective response at that speech was a good one. That's a different issue. But there are two answers to your question. Number one, we will cherish the rules more than they do because we are better than they are, and that matters. Every social movement in history that has actually achieved its ends has held themselves to a higher standard. Anti-apartheid, civil rights, you name it. We hold ourselves to a higher standard. That is our core strength.
They broke the rules.
Of course they broke the rules. Of course they broke the rules. We had this conversation, and you accept the circumstances. Let me ask you this. You asked me a series of questions. You read my tweets. I am not at all confused about how dire the threat of Donald Trump is.
I appreciate that, which is why I don't get the disconnect.
Mehdi, our healthcare system in this country is probably responsible for tens of thousands of deaths. Deaths. You could even characterize our health insurance system as murderous because of that.
Yes.
People are denied care. Why should I object to the young man who decided that he would break the law against murder to kill a healthcare executive? Answer that question
Very
for me.
simple. A, it's against the law.
Yes.
B, murder is always morally wrong. I don't think standing up to heckle a president who is trying to dismantle democracy, calls himself a king, engages in white supremacist rhetoric, is targeting the media, is targeting political opponents, and mocking you all in the process. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's nowhere near the same thing as murdering a healthcare executive.
Well, but they're on a spectrum here. You're making the argument that some rules are stronger and more compelling
I'm saying
than others.
Do not murder is not the same thing as do not stand up and object to a man that you and I both think is a threat to democracy.
Listen to how ridiculous that is. Jim Himes is really comparing Al Greene heckling Trump to someone committing murder. That tells you everything about the Democratic establishment mindset. They panic more about breaking some House rule than about Trump breaking democracy. Mehdi Hasan nails it here. Not all rules are equal. Shouting at a president who calls himself a king and pushes racist garbage is not on the same level as violence. But Democrats like Himes keep collapsing everything together, and it makes them look clueless while Trump gets away with everything.
Agree on that, right? We agree that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy.
But do you agree that all rules that are not obviously unjust, and the rule of House decorum or whatever it is not obviously unjust, that all rules that are agreed upon by both sides or whatever...
I'm not even objecting to the censuring. Like you said, the rule was broken, censuring. What I'm objecting to, and what a lot of activists are doing, is that you didn't need to vote for it. The 10 of you did that for some positioning or to send a message that we are, we believe in decorum, and that's what's bothered a lot of people.
Not that we believe in decorum, but that we believe in the rules, and that we seek to establish a dramatic difference between the Republicans who will move in lockstep, not hold their own people, but that we think and that we take the claims of rules seriously.
I think Al Greene established the dramatic difference in showing that he's got some kind of energy in him. And you've even lost Bill Kristol on this. Lifelong neoconservative, supporter of centrist Democrats. He came out in favor of Al Greene. He wrote, "Am I alone in feeling that it was good to see some fervent conviction and righteous indignation? Am I the only person who was actually kind of happy to see, in a sea of Democrats waving little paddles with lame messages, someone literally standing up to Trump?" He's right, isn't he?
He's right. But you're now making a different argument. I think I started this conversation by saying, I think I even support what Al Greene did. The question is, was a censure right? And was it right for me to participate? That's the question. So Bill Kristol didn't go on to say, and by the way, Al Greene did not go on to say, please don't censure me. In fact, he welcomed it.
From Republicans, not
because
from his own colleagues.
He understands that
I feel like you're trying to have your
disobedience-
cake and eat it,
I'm
Congressman.
not.
So then why didn't you stand? Let's take your argument to its logical conclusion.
Yeah.
Why didn't you stand up, object to Trump in the same way, and then vote to censure yourself?
Well,
I mean, that's where your argument's taking you.
That's a sophomoric argument. I mean, I have thought a lot about how I could have done more. And by the way, here's what's, I think, driving the activist community. It's not detailed arguments about the nature of civil disobedience. There's an immense amount of fear out there that I share. And by the way, I don't just share it. I own it more than most because I was one of the last people out of the chamber when Donald Trump sent a murderous crowd to end the Congress and to kill us. So I will give up nothing to nobody on the issue of understanding the fear. And I will fight that tooth and nail, as I always have. I did this for 4 years of Trump. I participated in the investigation of his that led to his. So I get it. But I am going to continue to pound the table on the point of both as a matter of ethics and maybe even more importantly, dare I say, politics. Because there's in the activist community, there is a little bit of an instinct of everybody should do everything all the time, everywhere. And when you're sitting in Westport, Connecticut, in your living room, you may feel that way. But the single biggest thing we are going to do in the next year and a half to stop this man is to win the majority in the House of Representatives. That's going to happen in the districts, interestingly enough, in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and upstate New York. That's going to happen there. And I would submit that rather than saying about the 10 who censured, burn them, look at the fact that 9 of those 10, including me, have beaten Republicans in open races or are holding down
You think
districts.
that was part of the calculation?
I don't know. I'm not going to speak for others, but to me, that question that I thought I might be asked by an unaffiliated, non-political voter in the Hudson Valley, 7 miles from my home, why did you vote to condemn Joe Wilson, but you didn't do it with...
I think my former colleague Chris Hayes, who you know well, said it best. I think if you're thinking about what an imaginary voter, swing voter, is going to tell you in 2026 about this now, this will be forgotten. You know,
it would be forgotten.
Look at what's happening. The news moves every day. I think you might have got praise for doing it. On the politics, though, you make a good point about the politics. But here's the problem for your party. Do you believe the Democrats have a clear and winning strategy for stopping Trump? Because a poll last week found that a plurality of voters, 40%, said the Democratic Party does not have any strategy whatsoever for responding to Trump. Only 10% think your party has a good, solid plan.
Start from where we started. The American people in November took away almost all of our legislative tools. Now, that makes me very angry, and it makes a lot of people very angry. But let me say it again. The American people took away all of our legislative tools. So we have a limit to what we can do. We do not have a House majority. We better win it. So do we have a plan? Yes. It is to oppose in every moment, as you will see in the vote today, with unanimity, to oppose the legislative initiatives of this president, of these god-awful attempts to slash Medicaid. It means to support the courts, which are actually the one branch of government that is standing up to Donald Trump right now in every way that we can. I think I've signed 3 or 4 amicus briefs to the court. And it means to work on public sentiment. Now, the public sentiment piece is where it gets really interesting because, again, there's a sentiment out there in the activist community that do everything all the time, everywhere. No, for God's sakes, focus on the economic devastation that this president is wreaking. I represent Fairfield County, okay? I am very careful about believing that I know what an unaffiliated voter in the Hudson Valley makes, but I spend all of my time talking to Mary Gluesenkamp-Paris, Pat Ryan, and other people who do represent these communities, and they will tell you, stay focused on the kitchen table issues. Don't do things that reinforce the notion that we are the party of chaos, you know? And anyway, I'm not going to try to
the body of
channel
resistance,
them.
because I think there's been a bit of a rewriting of history. In 2018, you flipped the House, not just with kitchen table issues, you flipped with a very anti-Trump campaign, right? Which then led to impeachment, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it was just kitchen table issues when I hear that.
So it's not either or. It's a question of
But
what
even on
really...
the kitchen table issues, how radical are you willing to be? I mean, Chris Murphy, for example, you mentioned you won your seat from a Republican. You're considered by many a kind of centrist, a moderate in the party. Chris Murphy, who was on this show not long ago, he has been saying, as you know, that Democrats need to get much more economically populist right now. They need to disown neoliberalism, some of the Clinton era. He sounds more and more like Bernie Sanders. In fact, Senator Sanders is speaking to crowds in Kenosha, Wisconsin. You mentioned Wisconsin.
Yeah.
He's getting tens of thousands of people are turning up to his events. Why do you think it is that Bernie has the appeal to a lot of people, even in these Republican red states, that a lot of your other colleagues don't have? Is it because he is willing to speak in much more blunt terms about the economy?
And there is no disagreement whatsoever between Chris's focus on the economic issues and what I just said to you, which is we must focus, not to the exclusion of other things, but really center economic issues. How does Boris Johnson win a stomping majority in the House of Commons, including winning seats in places where Margaret Thatcher is considered, the devil herself? He does it, and this is the winning formula, by leaning left economically. You will find that there are blue dogs and New Democrats and progressives who agree we need to raise the minimum wage, expand Medicaid, have a conversation. I don't know that we have unanimity on Medicare for all, but I think you will find great unity around the mission of a lefty economic message. And what does Boris Johnson do? He has a right-leaning cultural message, patriotic, and what happens in Britain doesn't perfectly translate.
What do you think the Democrats' right-leaning message should be on the culture?
I think we should center the economic issues that I think were a big piece of us losing in the last election, and tread very carefully on, let me use the word exotic, issues that are new to the American public. I'm thinking about it, and by the way, controversial, right? Minors with, receiving transgender surgery. There are thoughts on both sides of that issue. It is not a particularly salient issue for lots of people. I could give you other examples.
Well, the argument would be it's not a salient issue, but the Republicans have weaponized it into a salient issue, but the Democrats shouldn't go along with that.
Don't help them do that. Don't help them do that. And
some might say you sound like you're helping them do that by saying
the
we should stay away from it.
We are still carrying the weight. And let's set aside the substance of police violence and abuse. I made my points very clearly on that. We are still carrying the weight of defund the police around.
Come on.
Now, by the way, almost no member of Congress said that.
It was a Republican talking point that you guys let them run with at you.
And so we're just the passive victims of that fact? Or can we stand up and say defunding the police is a bad idea that is opposed most intensely by African Americans? So
it's actually not a bad idea when you explain it to people as about reallocating resources. But my point being is, I do think that people on your wing of the party have hidden behind that rather than look at other issues that cost you seats, cost you votes. Like defund the police was not the reason you lost the election last year. No one was even running on it. Joe Biden increased funding to the police.
I was giving you an example. The ad that ran, the tagline of which was, "She is for they, them, and Donald Trump is for you."
Yes, Republicans are very proud of that ad.
Well, and the research shows that it swung some people. And by the way, I'm not saying throw transgender Americans overboard. I'm just saying you can choose to focus on certain things and to not focus on other things. And we get that perpetually wrong in this party.
Your colleague Pramila Jayapal was on a show with me recently, and she said, "We are leaderless," in reference to your party. Do you agree with that?
I don't agree with that. No.
Who is the leader of the Democratic Party?
The leader of the Democratic Party in the House, of course, is Hakeem Jeffries, and I think he's doing a good job. I don't think that the way the response to the State of the Union played out was very good. Why? Because I sort of said, I think we need to highlight economic issues. I also think we need to strive for unity. Why do I not say we need to be unified? Because we're Democrats. It is very, very hard to get Bernie Sanders and Joe Manchin on the same page, right? So I think we have real work to do. Here's a thought. I've asked myself, what would have been more effective than this sort of chaotic, weird bunch of stuff that happened in the speech? What if, for example, we had all stood as one when he attacked us and left?
Yeah.
And we
or what if you didn't show up in the first place, as AOC didn't and some other...
Yeah, I think it's more powerful if we say this isn't a fair... This is my opinion. There's lots of arguments. To me, the most powerful statement would have been if we had shown up, shown the respect for the moment and for the office. Remember, the military salutes the uniform, not the man. And then, when he attacked us in a brutal... stand up as one and walk off. To me, that would have been a response of both unity and power as opposed to fragmentation.
But you didn't do it.
We didn't do it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's easy to organize Democrats.
That's where the interview should make every Democrat stop and think. Jim Himes admits the Democrats' response to Trump's speech wasn't good. Think about that. While Trump was on national TV calling them radical lunatics and mocking them to their faces, they just sat there quietly. And the one member who stood up, Al Greene, got punished not by Republicans alone, but with the help of Democrats like Himes. This is bigger than one censure vote. It's a window into how the Democratic leadership thinks. They believe that following rules and showing civility will somehow protect democracy. But history shows the opposite. Authoritarians don't respect your rules, they exploit them. Trump tested every norm, every line, and the GOP backed him to the hilt. Meanwhile, Democrats are still debating whether it's proper to heckle. Mehdi Hasan's point is exactly right. Not all rules are equal. You don't treat a broken decorum rule the same way you treat violence or corruption. Standing up in protest against a president dismantling democracy isn't chaos, it's resistance. And when Democrats choose to punish resistance while ignoring Republican rule breaking, they send a message that weakness is their brand. Even Bill Kristol, a lifelong conservative, said it felt good to see Al Greene show some conviction. When a neocon is begging Democrats to show backbone, you know something is wrong. The Democratic base is tired of watching their leaders act like referees while the other team is running up the score with no rules at all. The danger here is obvious. Trump thrives on optics of strength. His supporters love when he bullies, shouts, and calls names. It makes him look dominant. If Democrats answer that with lectures about procedure and civility, they don't look principled, they look powerless. And that's deadly, not just for an election, but for democracy itself. The lesson from this whole clash is simple. Democrats can't beat Trumpism by clinging to politeness. They need to show the same energy Al Greene showed, the same fire Mehdi Hasan brought in this interview, and stop obsessing over whether the other side will call them rude. Because here's the truth. Republicans will smear them no matter what. The question is, do you look like you're fighting back? Or do you look like you're rolling over? In this interview, Mehdi Hasan looks strong. Al Greene looks strong. Jim Himes looked weak. And if Democrats don't change that dynamic, they're going to keep losing ground to the MAGA right. But hey, that's just my take. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Do you think Democrats should stick to civility, or do they need to start fighting fire with fire? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.